member of the Foreign Relations and the Judiciary Committee. Senator, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.
Let me get your reaction to President Trump's baseless claim that he would have won the popular vote if millions of people had not voted illegally. What's your reaction?
Wolf, this is very troubling. Once again, we see the president focused on the size of the crowds that turned out at his inauguration versus President Obama's inauguration, the size of the popular vote and whether or not Hillary Clinton won the popular vote or he did. And he and his representatives, Sean Spicer and Kellyanne Conway, have presented this suggestion that millions of people voted illegally as an alternative fact. It's not an alternative fact. It is a baseless lie. And it has consequences, Wolf, because we've got more than a dozen states that have enacted laws to require voter ID, to restrict access to the opportunity to vote based on identification, using widespread falsehoods about the idea that there are millions of people voting illegally. So it's had a real consequence. This is part of a several-year-long orchestrated campaign to challenge the legitimacy of our electorate and our democratic process. And I'm very distraught to see the President of the United States, President Trump, repeating these falsehoods.
Wouldn't widespread voter fraud, if in fact 3 million or 4 million people illegally voted in the most recent presidential election, if that in fact is true, wouldn't that demand an immediate federal investigation?
Absolutely, Wolf. And we had hearings on the Judiciary Committee in the last Congress on the question of voter fraud and whether or not these voter ID laws were needed. There is virtually no evidence of voter fraud in the United States. Across every state in the country, as you know, Wolf, state and local officials conduct these elections. So secretaries of state, both Republican and Democrat, in states all over the country, have confirmed virtually no cases in our entire country. Not hundreds of cases, not thousands of cases, and certainly not millions of cases. But Wolf, what we do know is that the intelligence community unanimously concluded that Russia did try to influence our most recent election, and I don't see a call from the Trump administration for the sort of thorough, timely, and forceful investigation of that action to undermine our democracy, which I think it deserves.
Well, there is going to be a Senate investigation. There are House investigations. The oversight committees are looking into this. And as you point out, all the U.S. intelligence agencies and the FBI, they offered their conclusions publicly already. Let's talk about something else that happened today, Senator. President Trump signed more executive actions, including the approval of 2 oil pipelines that had been shelved by the Obama administration. The union leaders who met with Trump at the White House today, they were thrilled by that decision. Thousands of jobs will be created in building those pipelines. Do you worry, though, that Trump is siphoning off support from those kinds of groups, blue-collar workers like unions, who have traditionally voted for Democrats?
Well, I do think that President Trump is making good on a number of his campaign promises with some of his early executive orders. And I do think that in a few cases, they will show some real impact on job creation. But I wonder how long he's going to be able to make the kind of difference and to keep the sorts of commitments that he made in the campaign. Coming up shortly are much more difficult challenges than simply allowing 1 or 2 pipelines to go ahead. He's claimed he is intent on repealing the ACA while still providing health insurance for all. Yet the Republicans have no comprehensive plan for how to deal with the Affordable Care Act. And President Trump's nominee, Congressman Price, to run HHS and to lead the whole process of replacing the ACA is on record as wanting to privatize or turn into a voucher or block grant treasured programs like Medicare and Medicaid. And he is on record as being a staunch opponent of the ACA without a comprehensive plan to replace it. These things, I think, will be much bigger issues for him in the weeks ahead.
Take a look at these live pictures we're getting in from outside the White House. Protesters gathering right now. The pipeline decisions, the executive actions signed by the president today, they're beginning to show up. There's a U.S. congressman who is there, Congressman Grijalva, who is there, among others who are standing outside the White House. Do you expect Democrats will try to fight the president on these executive actions approving these 2 oil pipelines?
Well, Wolf, I think you're going to see very strong pushback by Democrats in the Senate on some of his extreme nominees. Scott Pruitt, to run the EPA in particular, is someone who not only would have approved these pipelines, but would have made major changes to the laws that protect clean air and clean water. Betsy DeVos, who is the nominee to be Secretary of Education, has had withering criticism and opposition here in the Senate. She's someone where many of us are going to vote not just no, but no way. And I think you're going to see a united Democratic opposition to some of his least qualified and most controversial nominees for the cabinet.
President Trump also announced today that he plans to announce his pick for the U.S. Supreme Court vacancy next week. The Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says Democrats would fight, in his words, tooth and nail against any nominee who isn't, in his words, bipartisan and mainstream. Would you join that fight, and including a possible filibuster that would require 60 senators' approval in order to grant confirmation?
Well, Wolf, let's be clear about how we got here. Justice Scalia passed away roughly a little more than a year ago. He passed away in early 2016. And that vacant seat was held vacant without a hearing, without a vote by the Republican majority for virtually an entire year, an unprecedented step. I think that every one of President Trump's nominees deserve a hearing. And if we hear that his nominee for the Supreme Court is a consensus candidate, someone in the mainstream of American jurisprudence, then I could vote for him. But I will join Senator Schumer in voting against someone who is an extreme candidate, someone who is outside the mainstream of American legal thinking. And the way we can get to that conclusion is through a full and fair hearing, exactly the sort of hearing that Judge Merrick Garland never received.
Senator, we're getting more information, more breaking news coming in to the Situation Room. We're also standing by a key confirmation vote up at the Senate right now. We'll take a quick break, resume the Q&A with you right after this.